Senator Urquhart.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. Mr Deputy President, under Standing Order 74.5, I ask that Senator Fifield remain in the chamber given the notice I gave him earlier today. Pursuant to Standing Order 75.5a, I ask Senator Fifield, in his capacity as Minister representing the Minister for Communications, why, after more than 30 days, answers have not been provided by Minister Turnbull for the following questions on notice from February 2014 Environment and Communications Senate estimates. Questions 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 151, 200, 201, 202, 203, 209, 210, 211, 212, 213, 214, 215, 220, 322, 323, 324, 325, 326, 327 and 328.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President, and thank you, Senator Urquhart. I can inform the Senate that answers to those questions will be provided in the near future. The communications portfolio is working to ensure that senators are given the most accurate information possible. But I do feel duty-bound to point out, however, that I think Senator Urquhart may have a relatively short memory. I appreciate she hasn't been in this place for a very long time, but Senator Conroy, as Minister for Communications, often provided answers to questions from the previous communications estimates hearings well after the next round, the subsequent round of estimates hearings had begun. And I can assure Senator Urquhart that that sort of disrespect to the accountability mechanisms of this place won't be occurring.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Urquhart.
Mr Deputy President, I move that in accordance with Standing Order 74.5b, that the Senate take note of the explanation from the Minister representing the Minister for Communications, Senator Fifield, as to why these 55 questions on notice have not been answered within the time frame of 30 days set by the Environment and Communications Legislation Committee. In doing so, I note that not one of the 446 questions on notice from Senate estimates in the communications portfolio have been answered. Not one. From the portfolio area called Communications. From Minister Turnbull, who speaks so much about transparency, so much about open government, so much about providing the facts to the community about this portfolio area, so much about better communication. Minister Turnbull needs to be judged by his own standards. Minister Turnbull hasn't run around saying his mission is to pay back for any tardiness shown by the former government in answering questions. He has instead clearly said his mission is to be open. This is a minister who promised time and again for greater transparency, promised to open the books on the national broadband network, promised to be consultative and engage with stakeholders, and yet this parliament can't even get answers to simple questions within a reasonable time frame. Mr Turnbull needs to decide, and indeed his colleagues need to decide, to what standard should Minister Turnbull be judged. The standard he set for himself, or the standard of the Minister for the Environment, Minister Hunt, who, despite destroying much of what is good in environmental policy, has actually found the time to answer most of the questions on notice in the Environment portfolio, the other area of responsibility for the relevant Senate committee. Now, I acknowledge that 446 questions are a lot for any department to handle, particularly a small department like communications. And I acknowledge that there are a lot of corporate questions asked by the opposition as well. But the questions on notice I have placed to go to the heart of this government's policy, or lack thereof, is in communications, and there is no need to hold all of the answers back. Minister Hunt's departments, with the vast changes they are undergoing, were able to provide many answers in dribs and drabs. It's not ideal to receive a few questions one day and a few the next, but it's much better than not receiving any at all. Why is Mr Turnbull's department, who's relative to the Environment Department, are not being made to go through some significant changes, incapable of making the reporting date for even one question? It shows a contempt for the Senate estimates process and a contempt for this place. From a minister who promised to be more open, promised to be more accountable than previous ministers. I won't use the Senate's time to outline every one of the 55 questions on notice that have not been answered, but I will highlight a few, because it is important to put on record the importance of these questions for communications policy in this country. And it is important that Minister Turnbull provides answers to these questions before Senate estimates starts in just 10 days' time. Question number 80 goes to the very heart of Mr Turnbull's claims that he would be more transparent. I asked for the monthly ready-for-service reports that used to be published on the NBN-Co website. These are still collated by the department. They used to be made public, but why can't they be provided? It seems simple. I guess not. I also asked why there is more information on Telstra's website about plans to upgrade copper exchanges than there is about NBN-Co's future plans. Again, it's a simple question. Justify what is and what isn't on NBN-Co's website. The government doesn't control Telstra, so the question is one of simple analysis, simple comparison of transparency between NBN-Co's website and Telstra's. Questions 62 to 67 seek detail about the conduct of the independent cost-benefit analysis and review of regulation. This review is due to report by the middle of June, and the Senate is entitled to answers on questions about what directions have been given to the panel of experts, what resources are available to them, and how their recommendations will be used to shape the rollout of the Turnbull broadband network. Questions 68 and 70 seek details of how much information the government has about current network coverage, which is important in assessing the funding in the budget for new communications infrastructure. While on the whole, questions from 71 to 95 seek further detail about the current state of the NBN and the strategic review, as well as statements made about both. It's Minister Turnbull's NBN now. It's up to Minister Turnbull to outline where it's at and what the plans are for the future. In my home state of Tasmania, people are getting particularly frustrated around a range of NBN issues that had nothing to do with the former government and everything to do with this government. People need information to be able to make decisions, and the Minister for Transparency, as he was going to be, is doing a fantastic job of not giving it to them. Question 202 and 203 refer to progress with e-government, which has since been identified by the National Commission of Audit as a way for genuine improvements in government efficiency, but on which there is no action. Probably the longest policy those opposite took to their three-word slogan election was the one on e-government, and yet they are unable to answer two simple questions about the progress for making it happen. E-government will now no doubt be a large part of the red tape reduction agenda, but this government is too caught up in itself to actually answer two small questions on progress in this area. I guess red tape reduction is another three-word slogan. And question 220, no wonder they didn't want to answer the question before the budget was announced, and that question read as follows. In relation to Australia's network, presumably the provision of Australia's network services is intertwined with Radio Australia and other parts of the ABC, that there are resources, including staff, which are shared. And the question was, 1, what would the impact be on jobs and resources at the ABC if Australia Network was taken off the ABC or shut down? The second question was how many jobs only involved in Australia Network would be cut. The third question was what would be the impact on Radio Australia and what would be the impact on all other parts of the ABC. And the fourth question to that question was what would be the impact of this on each state. One wonders if we'll ever get an answer to this in the next 10 days. After their horror budget move to strip our ABC of the Australia network and give it no doubt to one of their mates in the corporate media. The corporate media, of course, is well known currently for the ridiculous street punch-up between Mr James Packer and Mr David Gingle. The corporate media that is still on trial in England for phone tapping. The corporate media that is in part actually wrote about the huge impact on families, on low-income earners from this government's twisted priorities budget. It is no wonder that this question has not been answered. This is a government who speak about transparency ad nauseum before the election, but are proving to be the most secretive, the most deceitful in living memory. It is not good enough that no questions, not one, on notice have been answered by Minister Turnbull. He should be ashamed of this fact and he should move to rectify the situation immediately.
The question is the motion moved by Senator Urquhart be agreed to. Those with that opinion say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it.